What if the person you trusted the most, the person who promised to love and protect you, was secretly plotting your death? And what if every sip of your favorite drink brought you closer to it? This is the true story of Dr. James Craig, a respected dentist from Colorado, whose perfect smile had a deadly secret. In March 2023, his wife Angela began to feel sick, very sick. Friends thought it was a flu. But behind the scenes, Dr. Craig was sending thousands of secret messages to another woman and mixing something dangerous into Angela's favorite drink. Today, we'll uncover how love, lies, and poison came together in one shocking trial. They looked like the perfect family. On the quiet streets of Aurora, Colorado, the Craig family looked like a portrait of suburban success. James Craig was well known as a dentist, the man with the easy smile, the steady handshake, the perfect teeth that reassured patients they were in good hands. He ran his own practice, Craig Family Dental. Angela Craig, his wife of more than 2 decades, was a devoted mother. Together they had 6 children, the kind of big, boisterous family you'd see in a Christmas card. Matching outfits, kids grinning in front of the fireplace, parents beaming proudly. Neighbors saw them as the family who had it all: a comfortable home, church involvement, family barbecues in the summer, James coaching Little League, Angela baking cookies for school fundraisers. But the thing about photographs is they only capture what in frame. What the neighbors didn't see were the late-night arguments, the financial strain, the history of infidelity. James's dental practice wasn't bringing in the money people assumed. The couple's debts were mounting, and privately, James was pulling away from Angela emotionally and soon fatally. Angela started feeling sick. It started as something so small, so ordinary, that Angela almost brushed it off. One chilly morning in early March 2023, she woke with a dull ache in her head. Nothing sharp, nothing alarming, just a steady pressure above her eyes. She chalked it up to a bad night's sleep. In the kitchen, James greeted her with his usual, "Morning, babe," already pulling out the blender for her favorite breakfast protein shake. Angela smiled faintly. She loved that morning ritual. The hum of the blender, the clink of ice cubes, the way James would slide the glass across the counter toward her with a little flourish. But halfway through the shake, she felt a wave of nausea roll through her. Not the kind you get from spoiled milk or a bad meal. This was heavier, deeper, like her stomach was rejecting something it couldn't quite name. By the next morning, it was worse. Day 2. Angela woke with her mouth dry and her hands trembling. The room felt like it was swaying ever so slightly, as though she were on a boat. She gripped the edge of the bed to steady herself. James insisted she rest and offered to make another shake. She hesitated, but said nothing. Day 3. Walking to the kitchen felt like moving through water. Her legs were leaden. Her heart beat loud in her ears. She couldn't focus on the kids' chatter at breakfast. Their voices felt muffled, distant. That afternoon, she called James at work. "I don't feel right," she said quietly, "almost like I've been drugged." James laughed softly. "Probably just a bug going around." By the end of the week, Angela's condition had deteriorated sharply. Day 5, she vomited twice before noon. She couldn't hold down more than a few sips of water. Her head pounded with every movement. Her vision sometimes blurred, words on her phone screen swimming and twisting until she gave up reading. Day 7, Angela collapsed briefly in the hallway, startling one of her children. She laughed it off, blaming dehydration, but inside, fear had taken root. First hospital visit. James drove her to the ER. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, nurses wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm. Inserted in 4, drew vials of blood. The steady beep-beep of the monitor seemed too loud in the small exam room. The doctor returned after an hour with a shrug. Blood work was clean. No infection. No obvious cause. They sent her home with instructions to rest and hydrate. But rest brought no relief. Day 9. Angela woke drenched in sweat, her muscles aching as if she had run a marathon. Her heart raced while she lay still in bed. Every sound, the creak of the stairs, the hum of the refrigerator, felt amplified, jagged. Day 10. She returned to the hospital. This time, She told a nurse, "I feel like I'm dying. Something is poisoning me. I don't know what, but I can feel it." Second hospital visit. The second admission was different. Angela was placed in a small private room. The blinds were drawn to block the afternoon glare. A machine pumped fluids into her arm through a narrow tube. Nurses moved quietly in and out, their soft-soled shoes whispering against the tile. James visited, sitting in the chair by her bed, scrolling on his phone. He held her hand occasionally, but his eyes often flicked to the screen. Angela tried to rest, but her mind kept looping back to the same thought. Something is terribly wrong inside me. Every hour in that hospital felt longer than the last. And though Angela didn't know it yet, each sip of those morning shakes at home had been feeding the very thing that was tearing her body apart. James sent 4,000 messages, but not to his wife. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the low hiss of oxygen through the nasal cannula. Angela lay curled beneath the thin blanket, her breathing shallow, her eyes half closed. James sat in the corner, his face lit not by the overhead fluorescent lights, but by the glow of his phone. His thumbs moved quickly, deliberately. Tap, pause, tap, tap. What Angela couldn't see, and what no one in that room yet knew, was that James wasn't texting family for updates or coordinating help for the kids or researching Angela's symptoms. He was sending love notes, not to Angela, but to another woman. Investigators would later uncover the full scope. In just 2 weeks, the same 2 weeks Angela was suffering in bed and gasping for air, James exchanged more than 4,000 messages with his girlfriend. They weren't short messages. They were long strings of text, romantic fantasies, playful teases, late-night confessions. "I can't stop thinking about you. Soon we'll be together. It'll be just us. No one else in the way." The woman lived out of state. She knew Angela was unwell. James had told her, but he didn't say how unwell, and he certainly didn't say why. In those same days, while nurses checked Angela's vitals and changed her 4 bags, James would quietly slip out into the hallway. Phone pressed his ear. One nurse remembered seeing him grinning as he leaned against the wall, speaking in a low voice. He didn't sound like a man worried about a dying wife. He sounded like someone making plans for a vacation. Day 12, Angela's condition worsened. Her pulse grew erratic, her speech sometimes slurred. She complained of metallic taste in her mouth, sharp and bitter, as though she'd bitten down on aluminum foil. James brought her another shake from home. She barely touched it. Later, in a text to his girlfriend, he wrote, "She barely drank it today. Might need to adjust the plan." When police would later read those words, they'd freeze. The casual tone, the implication, the cold, clinical phrasing, "adjust the plan," as if Angela's life were just another line item in his schedule. At the time, though, no one suspected a thing. Not the nurses, not Angela's friends, not even Angela herself. She was too busy fighting to breathe, too busy wondering what was happening to her own body, to see the other fight happening in secret. The one for her husband's attention, his loyalty, and ultimately, her life. The internet trail that sent shivers through investigators happened. In the dim glow of the hospital's night shift, a detective sat at James' desk miles away, staring at the search history pulled from James Craig's devices. The list felt like a cold wind in the room. How to make poison look like a heart attack. Undetectable poisons. How many grams of arsenic will kill someone? Each entry had a timestamp, and every timestamp lined up with the same days Angela's symptoms had spiked. While she clutched her stomach, he was on his phone. While she asked, "Why am I so dizzy?" he was typing out queries that no innocent man should ever have reason to type. Back at the hospital, Angela's condition was on a knife's edge. Her vision doubled. Her fingers trembled as she tried to text a friend. "Still sick? Can't keep anything down." She didn't hit send. Her chest ached. She thought it was anxiety. Detectives pieced the pattern together. The searches weren't random curiosity. They escalated. First vague, then disturbingly precise. Potassium cyanide half-life in the body. Symptoms of cyanide poisoning in women. One investigator said later, "It read like a to-do list for murder." James didn't just search. He ordered. Records showed a purchase from a chemical supplier, a small, sealed jar of potassium cyanide, lethal in quantities smaller than a single teaspoon. The delivery address? His dental office. At that point, the detectives didn't yet have Angela's full medical file. They didn't have a confession, but they had enough to know. If they didn't move soon, they might be looking at a homicide instead of an attempted murder. And the cyanide? It was already in play. This delivery unraveled it all. On a Tuesday morning at Summerbrook Dental, the front desk buzzed with phone calls. Patients waited in the lobby, flipping through old magazines. Somewhere in the back, the faint hum of a dental drill carried through the air. Then the mail arrived. A brown cardboard box, no bigger than a lunch bag, sat on the counter with the rest of the deliveries. The receptionist didn't think much of it until she read the label. Potassium cyanide, for professional use only. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't toothpaste or dental molds or anesthetic refills. This was a word she'd only ever heard in crime shows, and it was addressed directly to Dr. James Craig. At first, she wondered if it could be some sort of legitimate dental supply. Dentists did use chemicals, but this? She carried it into the back room, holding it gingerly, as if the box itself could bite. That's when a colleague noticed her pale face and asked, "What's wrong?" She just pointed at the label. Within minutes, whispers spread through the office. One hygienist said, "Isn't Angela in the hospital right now?" Another added, "Didn't he order something weird online a few weeks ago?" The receptionist didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something in her gut wouldn't let her shake it off. She called a nurse she knew, a nurse who happened to be helping care for Angela at the hospital. The nurse listened and immediately called the police. Detectives arrived quickly, slipping in quietly so as not to raise suspicion. They examined the box. The shipping slip matched a recent online order traced back to James's work computer. The sender? The same chemical supplier found in his browser history. And inside, a sealed jar of potassium cyanide. Enough to kill several people, with lethal results in seconds. One investigator later said, "That package was the moment everything crystallized." This wasn't a theory anymore. It was evidence in a box. At the same time the package was being inspected, Angela lay in her hospital bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale. Nurses recorded her vitals and quietly discussed how she wasn't responding to treatment. The clock was ticking for her life and for James's freedom. By that afternoon, the decision was made. They had to move on him. The plan was to catch him off guard before he could hide, destroy evidence, or worse, get another dose into Angela's system. The arrest would come sooner than James could have imagined, and it would change the story forever. James Craig was arrested in the late afternoon when the call came into the Aurora Police Department's field unit. The package was in their custody. The poison was confirmed, and the man they believed had been feeding it to his wife was still walking free just a few miles away. Angela's condition was deteriorating fast. Doctors were battling to keep her stable. Tubes and 4 lines surrounded her bed. Monitors beeped in uneven rhythms. She was still alive, but detectives feared that if James was left unchecked, there could be no chance to save her. The decision was unanimous. They'd move in now. No waiting. No surveillance tale. No giving him time to spin a story. That evening, Dr. James Craig was inside his dental office, finishing up paperwork in the back. He had no idea the walls were already closing in. In the parking lot, unmarked police vehicles rolled in one by one, headlights cutting through the fading light. Officers stepped out, vests on, plain clothes layered over body armor. Their movements were quiet but decisive. The kind of practice choreography that only comes when you know exactly who you're here for. Inside, the office's glass front door swung open. "Dr. Craig?" A man's voice called out. James emerged from the back hallway, his expression calm at first, until he saw the badges. "James Tolliver Craig," the lead detective said, his tone sharp, official. "You're under arrest for attempted first-degree murder." The word seemed to hang in the air, impossible and undeniable at the same time. James blinked, confusion flashing across his face, followed by a tight, uneasy smile. The kind people wear when they're trying to act like nothing's wrong. His staff stood frozen. One assistant whispered, "Oh my God," as another instinctively stepped backward, pressing her back against the wall. James didn't resist. He didn't ask why. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply placed his hands behind his back as the cold steel of the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. But his mind, investigators would later say, seemed to be racing. He glanced toward the front desk, toward the spot where the package had sat just hours earlier, and then toward the cell phone on his desk. That phone, detectives knew, held thousands of messages to his out-of-state girlfriend. They took it. They took everything. Outside, James was led past a row of stunned patients in the lobby. One woman clutched her purse to her chest. Another pulled out her phone, already dialing someone. A young boy asked his mom in a hushed voice, "Why are they taking the dentist?" No one answered him. By the time James was placed in the back of the cruiser, the sky had turned deep blue. Streetlights cast long shadows over the quiet strip mall. Inside the hospital across town, Angela was fighting for her life. Inside the squad car, her husband sat in silence, staring at his reflection in the glass. Detectives didn't know if they just arrested a desperate man making terrible mistakes or a calculated killer who had been planning this for weeks. But they were about to find out, and the trial ahead would leave no room for doubt. The trial that left no doubt. The arrest of James Craig was only the beginning. Now came the task of proving, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the respected Colorado dentist had murdered his wife, not by rage, not by accident, but by slow, calculated poison. The courtroom in Arapahoe County was packed from the first day. Reporters lined the back rows. Camera shutters clicked softly between testimonies. Family members sat tense in the gallery, Angela's loved ones on one side, James's supporters on the other. Between them, an empty aisle felt like a canyon. James Craig walked in wearing a dark suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression calm, almost too calm. Some whispered that it was the same smile he used to greet patients in the dentist's chair. The prosecution wasted no time. They didn't speak in vague accusations. They laid out a timeline brick by brick. First, the marriage, crumbling under the weight of financial trouble and James's infidelity. Then the online searches, how to make poison look like a heart attack, undetectable poisons, how much cyanide to kill a human. Then the orders, packages of potassium cyanide and arsenic sent straight to his office. Each fact was like a hammer blow. Every juror watched, eyes fixed forward, as prosecutors projected the receipts, the screenshots, the Google histories onto courtroom wall. Then came the messages. More than 4,000 of them. Not to Angela, to his girlfriend. The jury read words dripping with affection. Talk of a future together, a life without Angela in it. In one exchange, sent while Angela was in the hospital, James wrote about how much he missed the other woman, and how he couldn't wait to see her again. The silence in the courtroom after that was heavy. Next, the testimony. Nurses described Angela's symptoms in detail: dizziness, violent vomiting, blurred vision, confusion. They described how she told them, in a weak voice, "I feel like I've been drugged." Detectives recounted the moment they saw the cyanide package, the one that set the arrest in motion. They told the jury how every piece of evidence led back to one person, the man sitting just feet away. The defense lawyer tried to poke holes. They suggested Angela might have been poisoned accidentally. They hinted at alternative explanations for the symptoms. They argued the messages to the girlfriend didn't prove murder, but the jury wasn't buying it. Angela's sister took the stand. She spoke about Angela's love for her children, about how she trusted James completely. She broke down halfway through her testimony, whispering through tears. She never thought he'd hurt her, never. It was a kind of moment that makes jurors glance at each other, the human cost suddenly too real to ignore. After weeks of testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. They were gone for only a few hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. James Craig showed no visible reaction. He simply stared forward, his jaw tight, as the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the other side of the courtroom, Angela's family embraced, tears streaming down their faces. They had waited nearly 2 years for this moment, a moment of justice, even if it could never bring her back. And as the gavel fell for the last time, the The story was sealed. This was not the case of a stranger in the night. This was not a crime of passion. It was the story of a husband who chose murder over divorce, a man who used trust as a weapon, and a wife who never saw the danger coming until it was too late. Angela Craig's death became a chilling reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one sitting right across the table.